Hey everyone, this is Terrified of AI with what are we on? Number five, I think. Yeah, the fifth interview in this series where we're interviewing um, leaders in the After Hour community. And today I'm excited for this one because he has come up in every other interview as someone that people look to and talk about often. And I think he's provided a lot of great insight to the community. So today we have Alloy on this interview. Uh, Quick background about myself is I bring a decade plus of financial professional experience, but that's more from a financial planning and tax strategy and business strategy standpoint. What I don't have a lot of experience in at all is day trading and technical analysis and things like that. So that's the reason that I joined After Hour, and Alloy has been one of those people that has provided a ton of insight to me as well as a lot of other people in the community. So with that, I want to turn it over to you to introduce yourself briefly before we get into it.
Yeah. So my name's Alloy. Real name is Dylan. I've been working in tech for about 12 years now, but was very junior in my first 2 years. So I like to say 10 legitimately. Software engineer, moved to data scientist, and now I'm an AI engineer. And that's really always been my passion is AI. I was a firm believer in it 10 years ago. And you may be fortunate to see that vibrancy has really taken hold as not just a theory about ideas in AI, but that we have the power and the resources to really move forward on some of this stuff. So I've been supplying companies with algorithms that allow them to do commodity resource management, risk management, and um, sometimes customer relationships too. Um, and I've been a trader since I was. It's been a little interstitial. Bit of an investor, grown into a trader, and I started right around when I was 18. So if you're also 18 years old and you're just starting out, shout out, you've got an exciting journey ahead of you. Um, and I worked at Bank of America for some time in the Treasury Department and really learned a lot. And I say my trading experience or my investing experience has been a little bit interstitial because I wasn't allowed to trade under certain circumstances when working at B of A. And it was a great opportunity to just kind of sponge up knowledge in that period. Well, it was all I could do instead of take that out on the market and try to make money. It was just nice to sit back, get a little frustrated with the environment, but mostly take in information. So what I did there is I built artificial intelligence models for predicting risk around the world for big companies that manage escrow services in Europe, Africa, China, America, and if a big global event breaks out, where do we put money? How do we shift resources so that we avoid the risk in that location? And that's when AI comes in handy, is those kinds of things. And I've been really attracted to solving those problems.
That's awesome. I know that was one of my first experiences having a conversation with you is everyone kind of laughed at my name when I jumped in the Discord, but then we had a long conversation of it, and that's kind of one of my favorite kind of go-to examples of a good experience that I had with the community was just talking about AI for I think it was like 4 hours one night, which got me actually scared with the basilisk collar. And don't look that up, by the way, if you're scared of AI. But anyway, um, so I like to start off these interviews, and you touched on it a little bit, but talking about your early investing journey, I can definitely relate to not being able to trade and invest in any means that you'd like to. I'm currently in that position, so I can definitely relate to that. But what kind of first inspired you to start investing? I know you said you started when you were 18, but what got you started on that path?
Yeah, I think I was inspired by the fact that there's got to be something others could be missing. And that's a temptation when looking at data. So when I was 18, I got exposure to the user interface in Thinkorswim. And if you haven't used it before, um, it's a really data dense application. It can be intimidating for some people, and for other people, it's like a video game where you just want to jump right in and as learn as much as you can. And that was my experience with it. It was the latter, is I just wanted to jump right in and what is all of this about? But also seeing how tech has transformed this world. Even growing up before I was 18, you'd watch a movie and a character would say something about the dot-com bubble or whatever. And having being young and having a good relationship with technology and then looking at a company like Microsoft stock price when I was 14, 15 years old and being like, "Oh wow, I can't wait to be a part of this with my opinions and my ideas about what the future should look like." Um, and I think that was really what attracted me to it is we're living in a tech dominated world, and it's of course easy to say that now, but if you knew it back then, it was just very seductive to become a part of that and to make money and to secure a financial future for yourself. And I, like a lot of other people, um, you know, I wasn't you know, provided financial security for the most part. Um, you happy and very proud to grow up in America. That's the first thing you can do right is be born here, I think.
Mhm.
But other than
Agreed.
that, we've got generations of people that were taught the wrong things. I saw it in my family to some extent. I think we all see something. Mom or dad is good or bad with credit, whatever the case may be. But we are inspired to do better for the next generation. And I think I grew into that as a man that I wanted to be better. Um, and I think the market is a great way to test yourself and your abilities to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. Just from a financial literacy perspective, it's almost criminal how minimal amount is taught in schools, and like real world financial literacy, not just like accounting one. Um,
Yeah.
they just don't talk about it in school at all. So you're kind of shoved after either high school or college, depending on which way you go. You're just shoved into the world and expected to figure it out. And a lot of people don't even get down the investing or any kind of financial literacy path. So I agree. I think it's really important. And a lot of people have seen bad habits, which is a blessing and a curse where it leads you to find yourself learning about this stuff, but also starting from an underdog uh, perspective. So I completely
Yeah.
agree. Um, when you were starting out and gathering your knowledge, I know you said you worked at Bank of America, but was there anyone or anything in terms of like a resource or book or YouTube channel or anything that guided you when you were first starting out?
Yeah, that's a good when I was first starting out, going way back, I have a bias, and it's that it was a lot easier to make money, um, I and I have a lot more situations where I believed in something already and I bought, but because I didn't really know what I was doing the first 2 or so years, I would sell. And so I'll be honest, one of those this is gonna be a shocker maybe for those who weren't around back then, but I actually bought AMD stock at $3.62.
Whew,
Um, I sold it at 13 something. Thought, I'm like, "Oh, this is great. This is fun." I made 300 something percent. Um, Boy, I wish I had held on to that.
right? I mean,
So,
I can't
I
blame
think
you. Those
yeah.
companies like Nvidia, 12,000% in 10 years, like who's not taking 1,000% return, right? It's just how could you not? So I can't blame you there for sure.
Yeah, there was a lot of situations like that, and you make a good point that maybe the information, the guidance was something that came a little bit later for me when I realized, "Oh, they go up more. Got it." Is it really just a buy and hold situation, or are there things that change in that I should be worried about? Are there better prices? Those very basic questions at first are what I was really motivated to ask by that small win, and by seeing the potential that I dropped on the table there. So one of my influences a little bit later than my beginning, because like I said, I was an opinionated guy. I had a good relationship with tech, and I was buying all this hardware. I just didn't realize that the time to buy and keep it was when no one else cared about it, but I did. Because now,
Mm,
our generation rules the planet Earth. But like anybody else, I was buying NVIDIA for my computer to play games. I was buying AMD CPUs to play games, and I just think wasn't there yet. But one of the motivations led me to a gentleman named Carson, and his name is spelled Cemkarsan, and that is a very Googleable human being. He's a big deal. He used to manage 35% of SPX futures, and he's got some great wisdom. And that led me down the path of trading on volatility and understanding when I should be buying and when I should be selling in on very significant events and time frames. So that's a big one for me, and that can lead you down a really cool trail. If you follow him on Twitter or you go on his website, Kai Volatility. I'm not paid to say that; it's just from memory. There's a great podcast called Top Traders Unplugged. Um, they have some great people on there, and Jem and the guy Neil who hosts that podcast, uh, they surround themselves with a really cool and fun circle of traders who have been in the game for a long time, ex-managers of hedge funds, fund managers, or market makers, like I implied about Chem. They have great information. Then there's a book I posted on AfterHour, Positional Options Trading. And every page I flip through that book, I haven't read it front to back yet because every time I just peer through it or flip to a random page, I read a sentence that to me just blows my mind about what you can do differently or better. And it's got some great information there. So one of them is, and this is the kind of stuff that creates conviction for me in that book. 90% of options expire worthless. There is more money to be made playing on volatility than not, and there are very provocative reasons why that probably won't change in the future. That kind of stuff gets me. When I read a sentence like that from someone who he's got a lot of books, the author, I forget his name at the moment, but reading those things and being like, whoa, okay, 90% expire worthless, so be short most options. And then your question
Hmm.
is, which 10% do I avoid? So I don't get assigned or so I don't miss out, I don't leave profits on the table. But that's a great place to start from. 90% expire worthless. Alrighty then. So I'll find the 10% of the time I should be buying options, and the rest of the time I'll sell them. And that's a good rule. That's nice clean numbers that you can work with. So I like that book a lot.
I think that's great. I'll put it in the description of the video so people can find that pretty quickly because I'm interested in getting my hands on that as well. So appreciate the context.
Cool.
Um, when you were first starting, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Capital. Capital. I wanted a job as soon as I could so I can pour as much money into the market as I could. Always been a fan of big responsibilities. It got me in good positions at my work. They would throw stuff at me, think I couldn't fit it on my plate, think it was too big for my britches. I put bigger pants on and get a bigger plate. So for a long time, I was taking on a lot of responsibility, and that costs money. So I was planning for my future at the same time as I was trying to invest little bits into the market. But normal life things would come up. When you're young, all it
Hmm.
takes is a fender bender, and you've got to shell out 1 grand. Um, yeah, pet gets sick, something like that. I'm keeping it light, but life is crazy sometimes, and um, I think that what I really wanted was capital, but it's so difficult to say because who knows what I would have done with it as a young man. Maybe I would have done something stupid. One say I bought a lot of Bitcoin. I believed in it, and I sold it at 27K, and I bought myself a nice car. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had just played in the market and bought a shitty beater, pardon my speech, but an old used Japanese car that's not gonna fall apart. I wish I had done that, but instead I got a really powerful muscle car. Um, and Subaru WRX. So if you're a fan of the WRX crew, shout out. But I wish I hadn't done that, and so I think capital is really what you want to preserve when starting, and that's just me speaking from the young man. Yeah, I think if I could tell the younger version of myself one thing, it would be, um, you're right about the market. You're right about your convictions. Put your money there and assume that your future is bright. Don't think about tomorrow. Think about 5 years from now, and then go back to thinking about the day to day because you'll get there. Time is passing, and you will get there. But for now, day to day, you just got to work hard and get that money. Store it away. Don't spend it on new stuff. Like my problem right now is the Switch 2 just got announced, and I'm like freaking out because I'm like, do I buy this? And so it's still hard, and that was my biggest challenge then. To some extent, it's a lesser challenge now, but who doesn't love more capital to learn or grow more? So that's the boring normal answer. More money would have been nice.
For sure. Can't argue with that at all. Um, so I wanted to take a few minutes here just to talk about your connection with After Hour, and get into your kind of role in the community. But I guess it starts with, how did you come across After Hour?
Oh, good question. Been neck deep in it. I guess I forgot what led me to it. Um, I think it was probably the Road to 10 Million subreddit. I think SIRJACK did a great job promoting it in there. The idea is as clear as day, right? Social investing, and there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. We've seen the wrong way a dozen times, at least, like FinTwits, DocTwits, all that stuff. But seeing that you can observe other people was attractive to me at first, and I think there are still some questions about the veracity of those plays. And I think that we should still ask big questions about what people are doing. I don't think a big number means big things are in their future necessarily, but I think
I would agree with that.
that it's an yeah, you gotta remain a little skeptical, of course, but I do like the premise. And for a while, I had my account connected, and the reason I don't now is just because I've got some family, and there's been data breaches, and After Hour is great, but
When you say
the
data
internet is
breaches, you don't mean data breaches with After Hour, you mean just in general with that industry?
Yeah, absolutely. To be clear, not After Hour. But I do work in tech, and if something were to happen to my account, it would be embarrassing. And then you know, we we can hop, skip, and jump over that because I think the idea is really good, and I think that it's really fun for me to consider putting a lot of my money in a Roth or some kind of retirement where it stays put and it's safe, and then linking a challenge account to After Hour
Hmm.
where I'm starting from 1K and I'm not worried about any of the security stuff. I think, long crowd strike, long security companies, because that's really what we all need to build awesome features, awesome apps where people are connecting more meaningfully. And After Hour is a fantastic example of how to do that right, not like FinTwit, not like StockTwits, where it's just Kramers everywhere. You've just got Jim Kramers everywhere, and you don't know what to believe. And After Hours is the beginning of something really pure and exciting, where we can start to learn about greater challenges rather than mediocre follower count or scrolling through somebody's profile to see their track record. We have more opportunity to guide each other to a brighter future with something like After Hour than anything else I've seen. So that was a big I leaned into that really hard when I saw it.
Yeah, I think the race to 10 million's been one of the more common answers in terms of how people came across it. Funny enough, every once in a while would go on Wall Street Bets just to look at what crazy things some people are doing. And I saw one of his posts on Reddit, and I said, you know what? That seems cool. Let me download it real quick, fully expecting it to be just like Wall Street Bets, where it's just like full on craziness, degeneracy, and also toxicity. But the last one for sure is just isn't really present on the app, which is what kept me around. So I agree. I think I'm a huge fan, um, of the app and the idea, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm really eager to I think a challenge account is a really fun idea, but anyways.
I do too. Um, for you, this might be different than some of the other people that I've interviewed at this point so far, but in what way has being a part of After Hour influenced your own investment strategy, or has it?
Oh, it definitely has.
Okay. Because I
I
know you've
think
influenced a lot of people, but I wasn't sure if it was the other way around. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And we'll talk more about your particular investment strategy a little bit later. I just want to know, how has it? What kind of things have you picked up along the way and After Hour, briefly, before we get deeper into that?
yeah, I think there's a bit of tango there. What you I was surprised that people took to what I was saying. I know that there's so many smart people out there, and I we all want to be one of them one day, and I think that I expected to learn a lot, which I did, but hearing how many people, especially young people, new investors, we have after uh, COVID-19 era economic challenges and maybe the rise of Wall Street bets, the GME craze. Um, it's great to hear where people are at in the markets right now, and so the way it's formed my investing is, in simple terms, more social. Like I before after hour, I would go other places and listen to what people had to say and largely just disagree with them without a lot of engagement. So I would just quietly disagree over here and think to myself, this isn't where I need to be in the conversation. And when I'm on after hour, whether it's the Discord or the app, you can see who's following the same. It's just a great resource for finding other people who are engaged in the same type of investing as you, and to work together um, as a unit of some kind to find out where you might have faults and to improve really rapidly, which is a very big deal because I'm a believer in finding inefficiencies both in the market and myself as a participant. And so by getting into debates or just even sometimes confirmation bias, having the same idea as somebody else and looking at each other and saying like, "Hey, I think we're right," is something that I wasn't seeing anywhere else. And so it's changed in that I feel like I have more conviction in certain things and I have more doubt in the things that I should have been questioning before but didn't really have the ability to. And that way, it overall has just made me stronger for, maybe a wisdom of a crowd analogy here is useful, but basically just taking in as many opinions as possible and being kind to one another. I I think that's a huge change versus before after hour for me.
Yeah, it's almost shocking to me how one of the things that keeps me around the Discord in particular is the ability to have conversations with people and discussions with people without it getting into a shouting match about who's right and who's wrong. It's more of a conversation, which, don't get me wrong, every once in a while we get to that point, but not very often. Usually it's this is the information I have, and then this is the information you have, and we talk about what we think, and we either come to an agreement somewhere in the middle, or someone changes their mind through regular discussion, which is just very refreshing compared to what society seemingly is like everywhere else nowadays.
Yeah, and I think we're hungry for that, right? Maybe it's a generational thing, but without going too far into that, I think we wanted that before After Hour came around, and I sincerely believe that because of what you said, that we could be. Some of us are probably following the future Warren Buffett. Like I don't know, but I think that it's a great breeding ground for really successful traders potentially, and we should look forward to it. Yeah, agreed.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I do want to get into other parts of the interview because I mean we already have in the past. I can talk to a bunch of the members of After Hour for actual hours, just because I find everyone so interesting. But one more question on this topic is someone if you're going to have a conversation, which you do oftentimes with people who are new to the community, what would you say is the biggest benefit of being here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know the answer. I'm just trying to think of the best way to say it. Something slick. I think what it is everyone wants to ramp up, but if you want to ramp up with a jetpack on you, then after hours is where you want to be. You're going to learn so fast. It's up to you what you learn and who you learn from, and it's going to accelerate your experience as a trader. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, for a lot of people, it's like drinking from a water hose. Sorry, a
Yeah.
fire hydrant. So it's a lot of information to sift through, but if you can find the right group of people, the right accounts to follow, I think you can learn a lot very quickly, which I'm shocked at some of the people who know a lot. And that when I ask them how long they've been investing, they're like, like October. I'm like, what are you talking about? How do you know this much? And it's been since October. But I think you're right. You can learn a ton really quickly on After Hour, which is awesome. Um,
Yeah.
One more thing, actually, I skipped over this, but Are there any specific members uh, that have significantly impacted either your learning or some of the discussions that you've had that you'd like to shout out here? This is the time.
I appreciate Brayflex for engaging in civil debates, being an opinionated guy about stuff, and reminding me that there's always a way to be wrong. Not him, but me. There's always a way in which I could be wrong in an angle that maybe I'm not being skeptical enough about, or I'm not considering it from a bearish angle. And that happens to all of us. So shout out Bray. Um,
I think he's a great
I
one
think
that has
full
not been mentioned yet, so I'm excited to put him in the next post for sure.
Yeah, it's a delight talking to him, and we converge on some stuff. Other times we're both looking at something like, "Huh?" And then sometimes it's a very strong divergence in opinion, and I learned something with each one of those 3. So yeah, cool. And I think full port or bust is one of the most avid and aggressive learners I've encountered in just about anything. He's really hungry to learn as much as he can really quickly. Um, and that's a great quality that, if he's not too over caffeinated like I tend to get, and he is willing to learn so much information that I think that I'm trying to get across to anyone who hasn't spoken to him just how willing he is to absorb more and more. And I think that his only downside to that is like you might need to make sure you get good sleep so you can really retain that information. That's how much this guy learns and how fast he learns. And he never has a bad day and gets emotional about it. He comes in to learn more because we all have bad days. He's a good trader, but you have those days. And when he has those days, he doesn't shut out. He doesn't get emotional. He comes back to somebody. Sometimes it's me, I think, and he's asking the perfect questions I should have been asking. So when I was younger. So shout out full port, absolutely.
100% agreed. And he checks his ego at the door because he knows more than pretty much 90% of the people that I talk to. Um, and like you said, it's because he's hungry to learn, but he checks that ego at the door immediately because he feels like he can learn something from pretty much anyone he has a conversation with, which I think is one of the best parts about him.
Yeah, it's the kind of person you want to invest in, one way or another. Employees, collaborators, whatever it is, that it's rare. It's a diamond in the rough. And there's so many people who have come around and kind of they're in and out, and I really like talking to them too. So shout out to Tig. I'm looking for his
Love Tig.
name. We got to
Love Tig.
Yeah, Tig is great. He's always chill. He's got a good, healthy perspective, in my opinion, about a lot of this stuff. He never is stressed about downside, and as much as Fullport is hungry, Tig is calm, and Tig is going to fare really well, I think, into stressful situations in the market when other people are freaking out. Um,
Oh,
that
he's
guy's
got
going
his
to remain
hedge
cool as a
positions
cucumber.
with, yeah, for sure. He's got his iron condors set up and he's ready to go. He is, whenever I hear an iron condor, he's the first one to come to mind, but he's ready to be winning no matter the market conditions, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I respect that, and he's got some experience in life on me. So sometimes he says some stuff that yeah, good guy, really good guy for sure. Um, I like. I'm gonna mention two more if I can. Is that all right? If I
Yeah,
have two
yeah,
more?
go for it. Two more.
Okay. I like Lupac. He's got a great sense of humor,
He does.
and
And he's
he
British, so what's not to like?
yeah, he could probably insult me a little bit, and as long as it was in that accent, I'd be like, "Are you making fun of me or not?" I can't tell. So yeah, love Lupac. And I think he has some interesting trades in penny stocks, which I stray away from, but he makes it sound so fun, and he does it with such low risk relative to his total portfolio that I get the sense he's just kind of screwing around with the degenerate parts of the
Oh,
market, and
oh yeah.
I think. It's better than going all in on penny stocks. He doesn't seem to ever talk like that about it. And so on a day when I'm bored or something, or I've cleared a house on the market one year, I might join him on some penny stock stuff. But I just love that he's around, honestly.
Yeah, I
And then
love
the
it
other
too.
one is Potato. Potato is a guy who he's in school. He's crushing a bunch of tasks at once at any given moment, and reminds me of the younger version of myself, but over the aisle. He's also British, and I think that um, he's. I think there's a bright future ahead of him, and I like the magnet I have to that kind of individual where it's like I haven't said this to him, so sorry if I'm calling you out, Potato, but I like seeing him research, and God, I wish I had ChatGPT when I was starting out because he's on there asking questions about the Greeks,
Oh yeah.
Gamma, Vega,
Yep.
Charm. Yeah, so who knows what kind of wealth he could generate in the future. It's going to be fun to watch if we all stick around long enough to see it. So, bright future ahead of a lot of people for sure.
So, I don't know too much about him. I haven't had too many interactions, but in the ones that I have, he's another one that seems very eager to learn and is all anytime I see him, he's like, I'm ready to talk about the market and I'm I'm here to trade and learn and I think that's great. Uh,
Yeah, and I have to say before there's so many people. I'm looking at my DMs right now, and I see
no, I
so
know
many
there are
names
so
I
many
want to
people.
mention.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
you want to
so
do
I
one more, go
appreciate.
for it. If you want to do one more,
Ah,
go for it. But we got
okay.
to move on.
Yeah, no, I feel you totally. Okay, I'm gonna rapid fire this. Uh, Day Zero, Cheddar, uh, Omnamen. I like Broadbra. I like um Tesla Fam. I like Sir Duke. And the rest of you. I'm scrolling through your names. I'm looking at you right now, and I care about your progress too. But yeah, we gotta move on. But
Got to move
yeah,
on.
everybody.
There's so much to talk about in an hour that I wish I could do more, but that's just too long. Awesome. I do recognize most of the names there, and I couldn't agree more. So I will put all of their names when I do the post as well, so people can learn more about them. But
Awesome.
I'd like to talk to you about your current investment strategy, which I think is what a lot of people will. If there was a spot people will skip ahead to, it'll be this because you've taught a lot of people, and I think they would like to hear it in your words when there's not a bunch of other people in the room necessarily. Um, but how would you describe your current investment strategy or philosophy? And if you want to separate that into long term and short term, and however you want to say it in your words, go for it.
The sentimental aspect is that I want to invest in things that I think are going to create the future I want to see. So I was an early believer in Tesla. I was an early believer in Palantir. I was an early investor into Nvidia and a bunch of other of the companies that we're talking about today. Most of those sold too early, but my idea, the reason why I'm motivated to put my money somewhere, anywhere, is because that's where I want to see it go, and I want to see something happen. So I have a trading style, and that's what it is. And then I have a play style, and that is my intraday or my day trading or um, like not investing but trading on
The trade.
smaller swings
Yep.
or yeah. And my my modality is I really like volatility plays. When is a big shift occurring? Um, what information can I get from my sources that give me a little bit of conviction when I see an inefficiency in the market? Um, and that's doing some heavy lifting, that phrase, an inefficiency in the market. But basically, when is there skew on one side or the other? A simple way to look at that is, are we too bullish? Are we too bearish? And then start by asking those questions and saying, now what's around the corner if the answer is yes? So to give an example of that, because I realize I'm using some words that might not be a part of people's lexicon or vocabulary just yet as a trader, but a great example of that is you can go back to my after hours history in about 7 days before the FOMC meeting where we created that gap down, the big Jerome Powell when he said good afternoon and we tanked. I told people to buy VIX calls because 95% of the market was sure of a certain outcome. And I just started by asking the question, what if they are wrong? What if they're wrong? So I'm not going to go into the details or my analysis, but I bought VIX calls thinking that we would have some greater volatility into that circumstance. And that kind of gets across what I like doing when I'm trading on shorter time frames. If I'm not investing in the future I want to see, I'm doubting some zeitgeist or some group think that's going on, and I'm being a contrarian. That is definitely my style, and it's worked out for me more often than it's not. I've been burned a couple of times early on, and that really just taught me to create conviction. Sometimes it's out of thin air, but most of the time there's a little breadcrumb somewhere that says, "Ah, this isn't quite right. This is not really true." That has done wonders for my portfolio growth and my family over the years.
Awesome. So more about the future you want to see, and then I know you're big on order flow too, but volatility and making plays around that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can time something right, I'm a big fan of catching the falling knife. I don't like that advice. Don't catch a falling knife. I think it's always worked out. Um, and if you can predict it beforehand, great. But if you can buy into the volatility at the low, just look at the charts. It works more often than it doesn't.
Yeah, I think the the struggle for a lot of people is going to be timing that the right way, which I mean, like you said, if you can, it'll work wonders for you. Um,
Yeah,
which it seems like the people in the community, more than any other community, because I don't want to say everyone can do it or everyone's good at it, but there are certainly people in the community that are exceptional compared to your average person in catching that top or bottom. So I think that's very interesting. And if you can find someone to follow like that, I think you should pay attention.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, being positioned well for it or timing is a lot about just having a little bit of cash to deploy, right? A cash is a position, and if you're going to catch a falling knife, don't be all in on any stocks, even if you're diversified. If you don't have any cash, you're at the mercy of whatever happens next. So that goes for testing other people's theories out. You want to test someone's theory out, have some cash, see what's going on. Maybe, yeah, what you said.
Perfect. So I do want to talk now about you had a post where you basically put out very recently, and I'm not looking at it in front of me, but where you put out dates and then kind of the direction that you're um, expecting the market to move by those dates, which we've been talking about this kind of in the background about what we think is going to happen, but you kind of put specific dates around it based on some DD you were doing last night that I happened to be around for a little bit. But I love to get kind of your insight and your actual words behind that post, um, and what led you to create that.
Yeah. So it's a lot to unpack, and I want to say first that I'm gonna make revisions if they're necessary. So that one post, I don't want to be a staple in
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I will be
So
doing,
not
yeah.
financial advice. Certainly not just one person's kind of DD on where they think their market is going to head, which I think there's a lot of evidence to point in your direction. But things can change very quickly, as we've seen. So
Yeah.
I'll let you get into it, but agreed, not financial advice, and things can change, and you'll update people as your opinions change.
Yeah, absolutely, especially that last part. So don't worry, hold me accountable, please. But in a nutshell, um, for those who are just catching wind of the interview, what I did yesterday is I posted a big thesis that extends all the way into mid 2026. And so far, the first part of it has come true when a lot of people didn't think it would, right? And we can center around that a little bit and just we can probably, if you ask someone if they think this is a volatile market or a healthy market, I think most people would agree it's a volatile market. Um, Volatile means there's a lot of inefficiencies. You just have to find out where and what they are on what time frames. So, speaking to new investors for a moment, headlines and media, not really what you want. What you want is to look at specific dates where we get economic data, and when we're going to see the Federal Reserve talk about their decisions regarding that economic data, and also try to remember that every time the Federal Reserve speaks, they're speaking about the previous quarter. So everything you know up to this point has not yet been priced in, and anything that happened going back into the past is what the Federal Reserve is going to talk about, what they're going to base interest rates off of, and that's a lot, right? So people like me do that work, and we decide what we think is going to happen. But everyone agrees, pretty much from who I've spoken to, that we're in a volatile market. That is a great time to make money for everybody, not just volatility players like me, but everybody. You just have to have a thesis about what's going to happen. So one of the first things that came true is, well, I said we could see 600 in going into the beginning of February. The day after I made that post, we ramped up to 600. Now, a lot of people were short. A lot of people were bearish. They're feeling a little spooked. And that's totally understandable because it's volatile, it's uncertain, all that good stuff. But there are a lot of inefficiencies in the data that I was capturing. I'm following some good people. I'm listening to people who have been in this space for a lot longer than me who also saw the same inefficiencies. Some of them I've called out. And those dates I mentioned for economic data releases and Federal Reserve meetings, FOMC, the days Jerome Powell comes out and talks and gives us a rough update and the things that everyone pays attention to, there are very specific dates for these kinds of things. And I want to keep it light so I don't, so people who are new feel that they have a way in to learn more about this. But some stuff to look into is the dates for FOMC, interest rates in
Can
general, and what the
you say
predictions
what
for them are.
FOMC? What is FOMC, just for the listeners?
Oh, so it's FOMC is an initialism that means federal meeting with a chair. It's a market update about where we have been in the past quarter and how we will change interest rates in a reactive manner to data we've been getting
Perfect.
from all kinds of.
I just wanted you to, for someone who was listening, maybe doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, so the Federal Reserve is considered to be independent from the government, and they operate to internalize the decisions around the way we print and distribute money in the form of loans to banks primarily is the big thing everyone's looking at. And that trickles down to the rest of us. That affects everything: housing, car loans, credit card interest, everything. And so those are big meetings where we're either cutting rates, raising rates that make it harder to get loans, or easier or harder, respectively, or we're staying flat. It's totally at the mercy of this one entity. But you can read data leading up to this, and they're looking at the same data. So having predictions around these events is really good. And I'm a firm believer in the options chain for the market as a whole having a very stabilizing effect on markets. The options chain never makes things more volatile. It has a stabilizing effect, but sometimes there are inefficiencies there. Sometimes there aren't enough puts. Sometimes there aren't enough calls, for example. And if you compare that information with these certain dates and these certain events, you can create a picture of what's likely and what's not likely and position yourself accordingly. You can play both sides, you can play just one, but in terms of making money during these events, having some risk tolerance, i.e., a cash position, having an idea of what you expect to happen, and positioning yourself in accordance with, stepwise events. You don't want to think a year out in advance just because I posted about it. What you want to do is take what I said and look day to day, week to week, how much of what he's saying makes sense to me and is coming true. And I could blow this wide open and talk about it ad nauseum, but in a nutshell, I'm just looking at the economic data. I'm thinking about the way the market feels and how the expectations have changed month to month. And I'm saying, like everybody else, hey, it's a volatile market. The only thing I'm doing is I'm giving you two directions: when we go up and when we go down. And people say, oh, well, like of course it could go up or down. But no, actually, I'm quoting someone here. And I agree with this perspective. There's a million different directions we could go in. And here I'm providing you just two, and I'm giving you dates. So decide what you're going to do with that information, how to position yourself. But so far, it's come true when people thought it wouldn't. We ramped up right to 600, and I think, well, I'll let it be the post. I'll let the post speak for
Yeah,
itself. But I'm excited about this. Yeah.
yeah, I think that I generally agree with it based on kind of what I've looked at. I do think that some of the data that came out very recently might have Powell talk about more cuts. And I think if that happens, we have another little jump up potentially before more pullbacks in March. But that's just my feeling about it. But if there's anything but stellar news when he speaks, the market's not going to be happy. It's been so jumpy based on any kind of news. So around what the Fed is going to do. So I think it's going to be another follow the Fed kind of year.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with the if else there. Not in any particular direction, but mostly the dates of when to watch out for these events. And one more keyword for the newbies out there is check out options expiration or OPEX, right? So if you're new to this game and you want to know why some days we ramp up and some days we don't, look into when options expire and look into why they do. It's worth it. It'll take 15 minutes of your time to get some form of an understanding. And it's the kind of thing that once you learn a little bit about it, you come back to it later because you want to learn more. So look at options expiration, the Federal Reserve meeting schedule, and the economic data, some more initialisms, CPI, PPI, housing starts, all of this stuff. Get good at reading this because you will, especially if you're young, man, you will too one day create a thesis that will work out, and it's going to take some time, it's going to take some practice, but if you can do it and you're positioned ahead of time, that's really what you need to worry about, is just be ready for whatever happens. Then you can live like a king. I call these markets kingmaker markets because a little bit of downside, 10 to 15% downside, and a big load up on shares, and we swing back up.
Oh yeah,
um Early retirement. Yeah.
for sure. Look at June of 2020. Made
Yeah.
millionaires.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're not. Yeah, we
We're
can
not
see
that,
something like that
but
at
we
an
could see
yeah.
something on a smaller scale than that. But that is
Oh,
in essence what you're talking about is finding that bottom and loading up on shares if you can.
yeah, and you know, another thing that the post doesn't quite get at, but look, we've gapped down since Jerome Powell spoke. Where we've been consolidating since, and it's because there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear about what's next. The next meeting is next week. That's when he speaks again. Options expired this week. So we're looking into more liquidity being placed into the markets until Jerome Powell speaks. But there's not anything in between now and then that would cause us to drop and create a new gap since Jerome Powell spoke. Like we are still filling that gap to the upside. So that's really what was behind the first point in the thesis. And since it came true, and because there might be a little bit more room for upside, manage your risk. But I think there could be a little bit more of a gap fill here since Jerome spoke. We haven't filled it yet. Um, that's the first leg of the strategy that I put out there, and those are the reasons why for step one. So we'll avoid all the rest for now,
Yeah,
but a little bit of
stay
detail.
tuned.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. I think it'll be interesting to follow that timeline. And I know you're not the only person talking about it. Fullport has strong opinions of what the next 3 months look like as well. So there's a lot of people in the community talking about what the next 3 months could look like. So just keep your eyes peeled for some of that information. Um, the other part that I wanted to talk to you about that I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about is you've created this awesome tool for a lot of the people in the Discord they call it bubbles, which is a funny way of saying order flow. Um, and I'll let you talk about it to whatever extent that you want to, but I know it's been a hot topic in the Discord that people really enjoy using to do specifically zero GTE trades, um, which isn't for everyone, but I'll let you kind of talk about what you've created to the extent that you want to talk about it and maybe how people are using it.
Yeah. So I, I am a big fan of making tools that maybe one day I could slap in a VR headset and trade like Iron Man. So that's my motivation is very nerdy. I uh, I know a lot about markets. I know a lot about how the data works, and I don't want to use these complicated behemoth software products like Thinkorswim. If you're familiar, again, what I started out with, it's great, but the mobile version isn't good. So I've been working on something for quite a while that I could use if I'm in the barbershop or I'm anywhere out there in the world at a stoplight even. Don't drive with your phone out, but if you're at a stoplight, maybe it's okay. And you whip your phone out, you look at some data, and you make a quick trade. And here's why I like zero DTEs for funsies, is because predicting a shorter time frame is a lot easier than predicting a longer one. Um, if you're not buying super far out the money stuff, then you can manage your risk and manage your emotions and learn more about yourself through your trades also. So 10% to 100% is possible in a day. It's really just up to your entry and your exit. How greedy are you and how correct were you about the movement from the beginning of it? Like, you got to catch it as it happens. That's a fun game to play. It's not unlike any game, honestly.
Yeah.
So I like zero DTEs, and I flip contracts here and there. I never risk too much. So that's sort of my relationship
How
with
much? How much do
intraday
you
trading.
risk? I think it'll be important for people to hear.
1%.
There we go. I'm gonna
1%.
make a
Yeah.
soundboard of that.
Yeah, it's an important rule, one I've been following for a long time, and, uh, yeah, I could say a lot about that, but basically, look, if you start out higher than that, it's really hard to go down and be satisfied with what you're making or even what you're losing. You might not feel it, but whatever you stick with, just stick with it and make sure you don't mind losing it. And for me, that's 1% over a period of time. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, so the bubbles, order flow. There's a lot of ways to visualize order flow, I think, and I've seen quite a few representations. And um, the bubbles are shaded algorithmically green to red. There is a whole spectrum of color in between those two, and it's based upon supply and demand. So if a lot of people are buying at higher prices than the mark or the ask, if you will, then we know that the price has to go up. But capturing that on candles is you're only ever looking at it after the fact. Looking at a candle flicking up and down does not really help you make a trade in a short time frame. But seeing that candle as it forms, seeing that candle become in the order flow is really helpful. So without a screenshot, it's a little difficult. So listeners, if you're just picturing it, it's you got bubbles. It's not unlike the way candlesticks appear, but they're just constant and they're in real time. So you're seeing every single order made on any stock in real time. And what that does for me, and the way I've explained it for other people, is those moments of uncertainty that we all know where it's like, oh, I have an idea about what this day will look like, but right this moment, is the next candle going to be up or is it going to be down? Sometimes you're very sure of one or the other, but it's for those times when you're like, it's a dice roll and you're not comfortable with that. I tell you what, a couple of green bubbles is a lot of information if there's been only red in the past 10 minutes. If there's been only red, a lot of selling, and then suddenly it shifts to green, and there's a lot more buying at higher prices very suddenly. What we've and order flow is a popular thing. So I'm gonna, I want to back off from the product and just say this is very common, but it's very expensive most of the time. And I'm trying to work with data brokers to find an affordable way to get this in the hands of people in a browser instead of a really complicated Bloomberg terminal. If you don't know, it's a big thing. Costs $2,000 a month just to get access. We're not talking about that. We're talking about bringing this to people's Chrome, Firefox browser so that they can trade on it wherever they are. And a couple of green bubbles is all it takes to create conviction in a play. Is it perfect? No, not yet. It's not. And maybe it never will be. But in those uncertain moments, when supply and demand are really all you need to know to enter a play, it's fantastic. And full disclosure, it's helped me a lot with exits. There's a meme that I sell too early. And I do. I usually leave a little bit of profit on the table because I'm kind of conservative when it comes to day trading. That's what I've learned about myself is don't be too greedy, be happy with what you got, and do it another day or another time. But
Mhm.
for me, I've just noticed I've gotten a lot of better at exiting positions, looking at order flow. So it doesn't have to be Prism, my thing. It can be anything. If you've got a tool out there that's promising to give you order flow in real time, first thing you want to ask about it from my perspective as someone paying for that data myself to build a product is make sure it's all of it. Make sure you're getting every order in that order flow. Make sure your computer can run it, of course, because it's if you're getting every order and there's little bubbles of different colors popping up, it gets pretty heavy, right? It's not unlike running a AAA game on your computer. And then the last thing is focus on those moments of uncertainty and use it that way to create entries and exits for yourself in shorter time windows. Like I said, getting your hair cut and waiting or being at a stoplight. Someone told me today or yesterday that he was at a stoplight, looked at it, saw something he liked, bought something, and made 40% before the light turned green. That made me giddy. That is exciting. That's the reason I made it. And I'm working from home this year, so I don't get to test it out like that. But hearing that he was able to makes me so happy because it makes me feel like we're headed toward this future where all we need is a little bit more data on a shorter time frame to make little, like, I mean, what is 40%? That would have been on one contract about 20, $35. So he made an hour's wage for a lot of people in the
Hmm.
time that took a stoplight to go from red to green. And that is why I made it, is so that when I'm out there, when I've got a kid, I can still find little snippets of
Moments.
time in my
Hmm.
day, yeah, moments to make money and to play in the market, because it is a game when you're doing zero DTE.
Awesome. No, I think I used it today looking at Serve, and it was actually fascinating to me. The thing it showed me today is that there are actively people trying to manipulate the market, which you need to be aware of, especially on OPEX, right? Serve danced around 950, sorry, not 1950, and every time it touched 1950, massive green bubbles. Market makers did not want it to drop below there, and then it dropped below, and the same thing happened for 25 minutes at 19. Um, the moment it hit huge green bubbles, it would shoot back up. It ended up closing down further, but you could see that there were certain areas where you could certainly have taken advantage when there's big buying happening. So I personally love it. I think it gives people access to something that they wouldn't even know how to find through Thinkorswim. Um, so I can't say enough good things about it. So, but I
I
do want to,
appreciate that.
yeah, I do want to move on. Just because we're coming up on the hour, and I had a couple more questions for you. Um, but like I said, I could talk to a bunch of you guys for 4 hours anyway. So, um, what do you think is the most common mistake that new investors make?
Oh, I guess emotions. It's been in a volatile market like this, the only downside has been emotions. You know, it's important to remain skeptical and be critical of one another, but we all get riled up, and I think for new traders, I wish I could I wish I could talk through the emotions and say, this is your battle right now. Right now, your battle is not getting emotional about anything, not justifying your feelings, not creating a reason to feel any kind of way, but just reminding yourself of what you're here to do. Stay cool, stay confident, and move on to the next trade with a lighter, different perspective on maybe what you did wrong or ways to improve. And don't go all in. Don't chase screenshots. That's the era we're in. So kind of the same thing, right? Social media, all forms of media have a really impressive way on us. Like they move us. And
Mhm.
seeing pictures of a screenshot on Wall Street Bets is no different. I do the same. I look at it, I'm like, damn it. How did someone make $1 million starting from what, like $100, whatever? But that's very rare, and you've got to have a bias against it. And the other part is the emotions that come from that, and any life, anything else, recognizing your emotions and when not to trade or when to just sit back and listen. Again, a great thing about the After Hour community, great thing about the Discord is maybe it's not your day, but good news. You've got other people you can listen to, and it's still their day, and you can learn from something they're doing right or wrong today. That you didn't have that before After Hour, so take advantage of that when you're having a rough time. Yeah. So don't let your emotions get in the way, and that's easier said than done. I understand.
Completely agree. And that's actually one of the reasons that I'm not doing much. I mean, I'm not taking out what I have in, but I'm at a point in my life right now where there's too much risk right now. Unless find a ton of conviction in a play that I can't go in. And I know that, so I'm actively staying out. Um, because I know I'll make a rash emotional decision most likely. So completely agree there. The one thing that I did want to ask you about that I skipped over accidentally was you interviewed the CEO of KULR,
Oh yeah, that's
on
right.
After
Yeah.
Hour, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that ever happened, um, in the community. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that, and how did that come to fruition, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, I'm excited to. So, first off, shout out Michael Moe of KULR. Shout out to the team. They were nothing but gracious about the whole thing. I think again, social media is really powerful if used correctly. I reached out to him on LinkedIn, referred me to his team, and we corralled the information together, all of us as a unit, and we scheduled it on the Discord because I just couldn't think of a better place for it where there was going to be an audience, and we want to create an audience for an opportunity like that. That we don't want to waste his time. So um, it was a really exciting moment for the community, and I think we were just talking about it, myself and others in the Discord. Someone else was like, message him, and I'm like, I will. Don't dare, don't, I'll message him, and I did, and then he replied. So I don't feel like I deserve much credit. I think it's credit to Michael for being such a progressive, open-minded person. He's really open to experience there. And what that says about him as a CEO, I think, is positive. And as an individual, um, your feelings on KULR aside, you've got some interesting leadership at that company they're doing a lot of cool stuff with the Bitcoin buying, like cool meaning not every company talks about these things. Not every company has leadership willing to jump in a call with more or less a stranger.
Mhm.
And I really didn't say too much. He was really open to the whole thing, and it just worked out. But he was a delight to talk to. For those wondering, we still talk sometimes. It's really casual, but after the holidays, he sent a little Christmas tree with a KULR logo on the bottom of it to me in a DM, and I sent him one back. It's a Christmas tree with a bunch of batteries powering it, and yeah, they're a battery tech company. They work on safety and thermal regulation. So I just thought it was kind of cute and fun, and he's a cool guy. I'm looking forward to whatever KULR does in the future, and if Michael. Um, whatever happens and he moves on to some other company, I would pay just as much attention to that one too.
Awesome. Yeah, well, for a lot of people, that was the kind of that Wall Street bet stock that After Hour found. I mean, that was popular in the community. I mean, I got in at 142 and it went to 5 really quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of people made a lot of money, but unfortunately for things like that, a lot of people also lost a lot of money. So, feel for those people, but it is one of those ones where kind of the community rallied around one and a lot of people made a lot of money and I think that's a cool experience for sure. But I
Yeah.
do also think that if you wanted to look at them for a long term kind of investment, they're not just one of those meme stocks. Um, I like what they're doing, and I think this Bitcoin treasury could be interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Definitely the right word. And I think um, more positive stuff. They're definitely a company that's thinking more about the future than the present. So your money could be safe at it's always about your entry and your conviction, but it's a good company. Look into them for sure.
Perfect. Um, what is the best piece of investment advice you ever received?
Oh, no. Let me rephrase what I was about to say. I think money should not be the end all be all. It should be a fuel to your fire that you're burning somewhere in your life. So, um, inflation running high, stocks are a little bit too high for your liking. Good news, you can take money out and you can buy assets. Buy yourself a home, buy yourself a safety net around your family. Buy you remember that that money is there for you. You are not there for the money is there for you. Um, that will hopefully make you think longer term about what you're really doing and why you're doing it. You'll be more gracious when dealing with confrontation, whether it's from the market or other people. And I think it's in your heart probably somewhere to be doing this for a very specific reason and not for the money itself. And they're just numbers. Doesn't mean they're not important numbers. Just remember, um, there's a whole big wide world out there. There's planes, there's jets. If you like Archer, there's electric helicopters kind of things coming. There's all these amazing things that we're investing in. That's why we're doing this, is so that we can create something real. Um, and so yeah, remember that the money works for you, not you work for it.
Awesome. Um, is there anything else you'd like to share with the community that we haven't covered today? I have a couple rapid fire questions for you after that, but the floor is yours to kind of say anything you want to wrap this up.
The acceptance my ideas had in the beginning was bar none the most open arms they've ever been received by. So thank you to everybody, not just listening to this now, and supporting Terrified, but anyone who said nice things about what I've got loaded up or what I'm sharing or what I'm posting. If you any amount of support you've given with the little uncertainty you have, thank you, and a big thank you to those who read my post and did not go all in because of something I said, but are thinking about it and are maybe testing my theory out for themselves. And if you come back and you say, "Hey, Alloy, that made me money. Thank you." Um, thank you. Thank you for not going all in, but playing your little risk game and making money based on something I said. Pat yourself on the back, and that is the way. That is what you should do and continue doing is being supportive, which I've learned a lot how to be even more supportive from everybody in the community who's been that way toward me. And thank you. Just thank you so much for helping me grow as a person.
Awesome. I think you're a real asset to the community. So um, happy. I'm personally happy to support you in that way, and I know a lot of other people are as well. Um, all right. So I end each interview with a couple rapid fire questions that you have no idea what's coming. So unless you've watched other
Okay.
interviews. So, um, what is your favorite song?
Ooh. Oh, God, I don't want to open my phone right now, but okay, so this is weird, but there's like I'm really into like heavy stuff and like gent. So if you know metal, it's like heavier than metal. There's this song called Ivory by a weird band, Shades of Black, I think it is, or maybe the album's called that. I don't know. It popped up on Apple Music, and whenever it comes on, I drive a little faster, I get more pumped up. I might drink more caffeine than I should. It gets me going, man. And it's just really heavy guitars, big drums, and it sounds like I really like metal that kind of sounds like it was made for like an Egyptian pharaoh or a king. You know what I'm talking about? And that's my groove. I really like it. So heavier is better. Just got to be a little bit crisp on the ears. It's got to sound nice but be heavy. But Ivory by Shades of Black, I think it is really good.
Cool. Um, if you're flipping through the channels and you come to a movie that you just can't physically change to the next channel, you have to watch the rest of it. What is that movie for you?
I can't. I'm not going to choose two. That's cheating. I think probably. Um, I like Pulp Fiction. I like seeing as we progress in media, which scenes they're taking out and which scenes they're not taking out for public access for cable. I like Pulp Fiction. I'll sit down and watch it every time there's little details I missed out on the previous viewing. I'll watch Pulp Fiction anytime, and it's funny when I realize, oh, they couldn't show that scene. That makes sense. So yeah, I like that one.
Awesome. Um, if you could spend the day with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
I think this is a corny answer maybe, but I think Carl Sagan. This is hard. Richard Feynman, the grandfather of quantum mechanics, or Carl Sagan. So I'm going to cheat on this one. I'm going to mention two people, but I'm going to say Carl Sagan because I think Richard Feynman would be annoyed with how little I know compared to him. And Carl Sagan, I could talk to him about aliens, the universe, our future as a species all day. I would want to drink with him at a bar and just talk about life, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite book? I know you talked about some earlier, but do you have a favorite one?
Mm, like 17 came to mind. I'm just gonna. It's not
It
in
doesn't
literally no
have to be
particular
about
order.
investing. So
Yeah.
whatever, whatever.
Yeah, I think, the one that made the biggest impact on me as an individual might be Simulacra and Simulation. So it's by a French philosopher, named Jean Baudrillard. Don't worry about how it's spelled. Look up Simulacra and Simulation, or Simulacra and Simulation. And a little Easter egg, if you remember the first Matrix movie, Neo takes a floppy disk out of a book that's cut out, like a secret deposit in the book. He gives it to some people. He's selling a virus or some malware to somebody in the beginning of the movie. That book he opens up is that book. It's Simulacra and Simulation. And it's a great book. It's really short, it's pretty dense. French philosophers like to kind of weave their words and repeat things a lot. But it's good, and it's if you like simulation theory and you like, oh, are we in one? Are we not living in a simulation? Stuff like that. It has some answers for you. It's pretty cool.
Interesting. I don't know if I'll check it out. That kind of stuff scares me, but interesting nonetheless. Um, do you have a favorite quote?
Um, ooh, uh, I don't know. We've had so many quotable moments in the past 5 years. I think everything's just vibrations, man. I think I don't know who said it first, but I think everything is just about energy and vibrations and the tune that we're rocking to. And maybe something similar like ride the wave, is find your wave, find your moment and ride it. Lean into the things that are working is kind of what both of those mean to me. So that's not a good answer, I feel like, but it's the one that comes to mind. It's the kind of what I live by. I try to find moments in time and not capitalize on them, just try to join in on something cool that's going on. There's always something cool going on. So it's all just vibrations. Try to find the one that you can tune into.
Awesome.
And
Very cool.
yeah, it's an answer.
It's I think it's a good one. It's genuine, and that's really what matters here. Um, Last question, and this is more after hour specific, but if you had to full port or bust into one idea, what do you think that would be? Not financial advice, by the way.
An idea or a company? Because I might have an answer for both, but which one are we talking about?
One stock.
One stock. Okay. Oh man. Yeah, okay. Another quote is if you're really 100% sure on something, why wouldn't you invest every penny you've got? So I don't know if I'm there with anything, but if I had to, I think probably Palantir. Yeah.
Palantir. That doesn't surprise me to hear that be the one that you pick. But awesome. Well, that is all I had for you. We're coming up on this will be the longest one by a few minutes, but again, I just really enjoy these conversations and I appreciate the time you gave me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, and thank you so much for doing these. I have listened to a couple, so I was a little ready, but I dig it. I like what you're doing a lot. So, not that you need me to tell you, but keep it up. And sorry if I made it longer. I
No,
appreciate you.
you're good. You're good. I enjoy them. And selfishly, I learn a lot from them. So there is a little bit of selfishness to it, but I think a lot of people can learn a lot from each person I've had on. So uh, I will continue to do them. And thanks everyone for joining in, and we will have more coming soon.